Good morning and welcome to Learning with Friends. I'm Pat Fairless from Fairless Stamp and Flair, and I have a really fun technique for you today. It is called Brayered Batik, and we use a brayer. I was so excited when Stampin' Up! Brought back their hard rubber brayers because there's so many techniques and fun things you can do with a brayer. So if you haven't had a chance to play with one today, I'm going to show you one way to use it. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to flip my camera over here. So this is our new brayer. When you get it, you will see that there's these two little legs on this side. That's so we can set it down on the table without getting ink all over everything, which is kind of nice, right? But we also have to remember when we ink it to flip it over, because you do not want to run these over your ink pad because that would make a mess, a little piece of dirt on there. So Brayered Batik is kind of a fun technique to come up with some interesting backgrounds for your cards. I have 3 different cards I'm going to show you today, and what you need for it is you need some watercolor paper, which is what I have here. You need a brayer, you need a water spritzer, and then any ink colors of your choice work great. So the card, or the one I'm going to show you, I'm using kind of a rainbow effect. So I have Daffodil Delight, Pumpkin Pie, Granny Apple Green, Gorgeous Grape, and Blueberry Bushel. And I want those to be on my card from the top down. Now, I'm right-handed, so I use this in my right hand. Obviously, I'm going to lay down one layer at a time, so I'm going to only ink up maybe about 1 inch of the left end of my brayer. If you are left-handed, you may find it easier to do the other end. Do whatever works best for you. It doesn't really matter. And I want it to go yellow down to blue. Now, in my practicing, I did find out that some colors, once you spritz it with water, seem to run a little bit more. This is definitely a technique you're going to want to play and experiment with, because some are darker, some are lighter, and the amount of color you get is going to vary how much ink you put on, how much water you put on. And every card is going to turn out different. So there's no right or wrong, but let's just go ahead and get started. I am going to work on today's card from colors top to bottom, because I found that the Gorgeous Grape and Blueberry Bushel are much darker. And for some reason, obviously darker is obvious, right? But for some reason, they also didn't want to run quite as well or blend together quite as well. So I want them to be a little bit wet. So the ones that ran better, I did first. So let's just go ahead and get started. Now make sure I got this so you can see here. Like I said, I am just going to ink up about 1 inch of this, and then we are going to brayer across the card. And how much you add. Again, it's going to be a matter of experimentation and what gives you the effect you like. So let's go ahead with Pumpkin Pie. Now, we do have to clean this in between time. My favorite way to clean this thing is just to run it under my faucet on the sink. Obviously, I'm not standing next to a sink, so I have a little dish over here with water that I can just dip it in and clean it off and then dry it up. So let's ink up the end again. And we don't have to blend these together. It's okay if we have a line between it. That's fine. I have my little microfiber cloth here to just dry it. You do want it dry, because if you put water on here, then it won't hurt anything. It's just going to look different. So let's do the same thing with Granny Apple Green. When you ink a brayer, you have to push, lift, push, lift. That way you get it all the way around. You just go back and forth, you're only going to get this little piece, right? So I am not putting a lot of ink on here. If I wanted these colors darker, obviously I could go back and re-ink my brayer and add some additional ink, but I don't want it that dark for the card I'm going to make. So now I'm going to do Gorgeous Grape. And because these are darker, again, you'll want to play with it. I can't stress enough how much it's important to kind of play around. Your first one may not turn out the way you like it. It may turn out exactly the way you wanted it. But it's fun to play. So, and then the last one here is Blueberry Bushel, and we're just going to ink this up here a little bit. Now, I got a lot of ink on here. My thing is pretty inky. Let's get the hair off from it. That would be my hair. There we go. And Blueberry Bushel, because it's dark, I'm only going to wipe it across there once. The other thing I should mention is what I learned while I close these up is that I would definitely start with a piece of watercolor paper that is larger than what you want it to be ultimately. That way you can trim it down to size. The water, when you spritz it, and I'm going to bring in a couple of layers here of paper towel because we're going to put quite a bit of water on here. But the water does pool and puddle. And when it does that, it often does it at the edges. So I'm just going to spritz this. I'm going to spritz it pretty good. And you can see when it starts to run, that's what I want. Now, the colors I put on last are going to run more typically because they're not as dry as the ones up here in front. But that is the technique. Now, you can let this set and dry on its own. You can use a heat tool to do it. I typically used a heat tool, but you can see here how the water is puddling along the edge and the blue has run all the way down. That's why I say to cut it larger than you want it. If you want it to run, then tip it and let it run. I'm going to go ahead and dry this with the heat tool. I like the heat tool. And I apologize for the noise. I like the heat tool because if you do it when there's still a fair amount of water, you can push the water where you want it to go. And you can make some patterns. If you don't, just blow it to the edge if you don't want that. Isn't that a pretty rainbow? Hold this flat, it will flatten out once it dries. It's pretty wet. I put quite a bit of water on there. Okay. It is not totally dry, but it's dry enough for me to pick it up and show you. And you can see here how the blue ran down more into the Gorgeous Grape and into the green, a little less runny on top. But isn't that a pretty background? So let me show you the card that I made using that. Because you can now take this, trim it down to whatever size you want. I stamped with Versamark and then heat embossed with black embossing powder on my image here. You could just stamp with StazOn. Because this is watercolor paper and there is some texture, I would suggest if you have one to use some kind of a positioning tool. I know we no longer sell the Stamparatus, but if you still have one, that's what I used. It works great. You may want to stamp it twice with Versamark and then heat emboss, just because this has some texture. So this is the Inked and Tiled stamp set. I wanted to keep it simple because I wanted my background to be the star, really, and not detract from that. So this is the first card. And let me show you, here's another one I made using the same color combination. And see what I mean here, how if the water runs, you can get watermarks. It kind of makes it an interesting effect. I kind of like it. I can't say I dislike it, but if you don't like that, that's why you can then trim it down to size and get rid of part of that. So that's why I like to suggest to make this larger than what you know you want your finished size to be, because you can trim off things you don't like. Plus you can get some cool scraps to use maybe on the inside. Now I didn't put anything on the inside. This is just a simple card, but I certainly could use leftover scraps. The other card I made, you can see how different these two look. They use the same technique. This has Parakeet Party, Pool Party, and Pretty Peacock. And this stamp set is called Calm and Quiet, and it is a hostess stamp set that is in the back of the catalogs that with qualifying orders, whether you host a party or if you just place an order large enough, you can earn this stamp set for free. But it's a really pretty, I frankly forgot I had ordered it. This is Calm and Quiet, and it has these two stamp sets in here, both. If you love to color, this would be beautiful colored as with this one, but you can see why it's called Calm and Quiet, right? So this is our second card, and here on the inside I did have a little scrap left, so I just used the scrap to decorate my inside of my card. And then the last card is this one here. This is made with the Sweet and Precious stamp set. Cute little images. This is another one I forget that I have. I don't use it very often, but it's nice when you just want to stamp something. And again, all of these are embossed with Basic Black Embossing Party. On this one, I used, gotta make sure I have the right one here. I used, I think it's Lemon Lime Twist, Crumb Cake, and Early Espresso. Yes, Lemon Lime Twist, Crumb Cake, and Early Espresso. And I did this one several times, and they probably had the most variation. I'll just show you the other two I did. Here you can see it's lighter down here on bottom, even though I had Early Espresso, and I didn't put a lot of it. It kind of, once I sprayed the water, it sort of washed away. And this was the very, very first one I made. I got some of the Lemon Lime Twist must have run down here. You can see I got a couple little streaks. This one is definitely darker. So if you look at the three, you can see they're all going to look different. That's why I say just play and have some fun, and don't worry about it. It's going to look great. So let's flip our camera back. Okay, here we go. That's not what I wanted to do. I want this one. And I don't know why I have this. I don't want it. Okay, there we go. And it says my mic is muted. It's telling me, so I certainly hope it's not muted and that you can hear me. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Sometimes it gives me that message, and it's because there's two mics in the setup. And sometimes it tells me it's muted, and sometimes it doesn't tell me that. So I know one of them's on, so I'm hoping you can hear me okay. So that is Brayered Batik. I hope you liked that. If you did, will you give me a thumbs up? I'd appreciate it. Subscribe, and please share it with your friends, because it's more fun to learn new things with other people and to stamp together, right? And that's kind of what this is all about. It's about learning with friends. So I hope you have a great day. I hope wherever you are staying warm, because it is very, very cold here. So have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week. Take care and God bless.